At some point in the past year, a Chinese chip engineer opened their workstation and found that the software they used to design silicon, tools built by American companies, licensed from American servers, was simply gone. Not the fabrication machines, not the raw materials, the software, the programs where a chip is a drawing before it is ever an object. That is where every modern processor begins its life, and that is what got cut. Washington called it a chokepoint. Synopsys and Cadence, two American companies that together hold what analysts describe as an effectively duopolistic grip on the global market for chip design software, were the lever. Without access to their toolchains, Chinese engineers could not move a design from blueprint to silicon. The restriction was quiet, targeted, and structurally devastating. Then, roughly 6 weeks later, as reported, access was restored. No announcement, no press conference. Just a door that had been locked, now unlocked. The walkback was the story. What I want to show you is why that reversal tells us more about the actual balance of leverage than the ban ever did. Chip design software, what the industry calls electronic design automation, is the toolchain that exists before fabrication even begins. A modern high-end processor contains billions of interconnected components. Holding that architecture in human memory is not slow. It is physically impossible. The software is not a shortcut. It is the only path from idea to manufacturable object. Banning access to it is like locking an architect out of their design software the day before permits are due. The land still exists. The materials are still there. But nothing moves until someone can draw the blueprints. Chinese domestic alternatives exist. Companies have been developing homegrown tools, and that effort is real. But no independent benchmark has placed any of them at parity with what Synopsys and Cadence produce. The gap is not hypothetical, so the choke point, on paper, was genuine, which makes what happened 6 weeks later stranger, not less significant. Reports indicate that the restoration of access coincided, in timing, with a period of elevated pressure around Chinese rare earth export controls. The causal link is analytically plausible and widely reported. It has not been formally confirmed by either government, and that matters. The reversal may have reflected legal reinterpretation, lobbying from American software vendors protecting their China revenue, or a compliance technicality. No official statement framed it as a concession. The silence itself is data. But here's what the silence cannot explain away. A government that quietly unlocks a door it announced it was locking is not projecting strength. It is confirming that someone on the other side had a key. This is where the surface story, software banned, software restored, stops being about software. Rare earths, elements like dysprosium and terbium, are not exotic footnotes. They are embedded in the magnets that run electric vehicle motors, in the components inside defense hardware, and consumer electronics manufactured at scale. The overwhelming bulk of global rare earth refining runs through Chinese facilities, even when the ore is mined elsewhere. That dependence predates the current chip tensions by decades. It was not built as a weapon. It accumulated as an industrial fact. And industrial facts, when leverage is needed, become leverage. The ban was the probe. That is my honest read. If Washington intended the electronic design automation restriction as a permanent structural constraint on Chinese chip development, it would not have needed to lift it to preserve the broader relationship. The fact that it came back up suggests someone ran the arithmetic on what holding it would cost, and found the number uncomfortably high. A choke point used as a bargaining chip is functionally different from one used as a siege weapon. The first has to be tradable, which means it has to be released, which means the other side learns its actual duration. Think of it this way. The United States controls the pencil. China controls the graphite. You can threaten to take away the pencil, and that threat is real. The pencil is genuinely better than anything else available. But if the graphite disappears first, the pencil becomes decorative. 6 weeks measured which removal hurt faster. China did not outcode Synopsys in those 6 weeks. It did not close the software gap or produce a domestic toolchain that changed the calculus. It did not have to. It only had to make the cost of holding the restriction visible. And 6 weeks was exactly long enough to do that. Before I tell you what I think this means going forward, I want to be honest about the counterarguments, because the optimistic version of this story is not stupid. First, correlation is not causation. The timing of the reversal and the rare earth pressure may be coincidental. No document links them officially. The analytical story is compelling. It is not proven. Second, the assumption that domestic Chinese chip design software cannot close the gap may not hold over a 10 to 15-year horizon. History in this industry does not show permanent ceilings, only slow ones. The current gap is real. Permanent is a different claim. Third, rare earth leverage is real but not unlimited. Investment in alternative processing capacity in Australia and elsewhere is ongoing. Material substitution research is advancing. China's ability to use this lever decreases if Western investment holds, and that is a genuine if, but not an implausible one. Taken together, the strongest counterargument is that this was a messy, multi-factor policy moment, not a clean strategic defeat, and the structural imbalances may correct before they calcify. I find that plausible. I also find it considerably easier to believe before the reversal happened than after. The reversion is a fact. The silence around it is a fact. The timing is a fact. What those facts add up to is a judgment call, and my judgment is that someone blinked. What the 6 weeks revealed is not that China won. It is that the choke point pointed both ways, and Washington found out in real time which direction hurt more. Synopsys and Cadence still build the best chip design tools on the planet. That advantage is real. It is also, apparently, bounded by what it costs to use it. The restriction meant to function as a ceiling became a measurement instrument instead, and the reading came back inconvenient. Every leverage cuts both directions once someone measures the flinch. The wall designed to contain became a map showing exactly which lever Beijing already held. The choke point, it turned out, was bilateral, and 6 weeks was all it took to find that out. The country that controls the choke point is not always the one that built it. Sometimes it is the one that survives the test of holding it. Here is what I genuinely want to know from you. If the United States walks a restriction back once, does Beijing now know exactly how long to wait every future time? Drop your read in the comments. And if this kind of structural breakdown is useful to you, the subscribe button is the only algorithm I have.